Live from the Plutopia, can't even say it, Plutopia News Network. I'm having one of those days. That's because I'm kind of being a little mousy today. This is the Plutopia News Network Happy Hour, and we're just happy to be anywhere this time of day. And I'm Scoop Sweeney. That's me over there. The other guy in the picture, the one that is all together and happy and just glad to be here. That's John Lebkowski. Hi, John. Hope your mouth is working. Mine isn't. It's having a senior moment.
Well, as my mom always said, boy, you got a mouth on you.
Yeah, last time I saw a mouth like that, it had a hook in it.
Sounds fishy to me.
That's the Rodney Dangerfield. I'll have to credit him. Last time I saw a head like that, it was in a beer. Anyway. Yeah, we've set the tone for today.
And it's just Scoop and I right now. Maggie is due to be here any minute. We're not sure about Susie. Hopefully she will be here. But we're very subject focused tonight. We don't have a particular guest. We were going to talk about anomalies.
I've got an anomaly, John.
What is your anomaly, Scoop?
This one, is it showing? No, it's not. Well,
I saw an anomaly earlier that looked like a mouse and a stick of gum. Oh, there we go.
An anomaly thing is not like the other. You remember the old song? What was it on? Jailhouse, Schoolhouse Rock, or Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. That's your anomaly.
Who are those guys?
I don't know. They just they're both Republicans, apparently.
The Republican Party changed a lot from one of those guys to the other, I think.
Yep. Anyway. Okay, and now that I've set the tone for confusion, anomalies can be just about anything, really, anything that's different.
Well, I have some inspiration here. Here's one source of inspiration. This is a site that I've been aware of for some time, and it's actually a very good site. They cover all kinds of anomalous occurrences, events, encounters, et cetera. As you can see, if you can read that stuff, as I scroll it quickly by, there's quite a lot on here about various things like UFOs, ghosts, near-death experiences, the man who used dreams and premonitions to predict the future there. A lot, actually quite a lot on here about UFOs and the state of UFO research.
Mm-hmm.
And
we've done a few shows on that, and there's still way more that can be explored.
I believe so, yeah.
I had the good fortune of covering Dr. Stanton Friedman, one of the early UFO exponents. He was lecturing back in the 70s, and I happened to catch him and talk to him for a while. And he was taking a scientific, scholarly approach to UFOs. It wasn't, they're going to come and they're going to eat us, and they took me up and put something up my butt. No, his was more taking the statistics and analyzing how, the kind of people and how many people had actually seen or claimed to see UFOs, and that impressed me, because before I'd kind of written off a lot of the UFO sightings as someone had a little bit too much moonshine or had been hit on the head too many times. But it turned out it's not that.
No, not
There
at all.
is Dr. Stanton Friedman, a interesting guy.
Did you actually interview him?
Yes, I did. Actually, I included part of it. We did a UFO special, and I put a clip or two from that. In fact, speaking of UFOs, there's an unidentified flying Maggie. She's zooming in from Taos. Ah, it's an
There she
unidentified
is.
flying Maggie. Run for your lives. Hello there.
Apologies for my lateness.
Well, since Maggie is here, I have something that I might be able to play. Let's see. Where is it? Okay, hold on a minute.
Hold on, everybody. But wait, there's more.
There we go. I found it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
The Taos hum.
Can you hear
it? That's a new one on me.
Is the sound coming through?
I'm not hearing any.
Nope.
Okay, hold on a minute. I probably need to
Pump up the volume.
Well, how do you do that?
Down here, where you see the speaker thing on the screen of the video.
No, it's not the video. The video is playing here.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to find something that
like in the settings.
Yeah, there's
like the Zoom settings or something. I wonder if it's
there's a share setting for sharing audio. And I am not. Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay, good. We're in good shape now. Okay, I'll get back here. Whoa. This is not this is not what we meant to share.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like that. It's amazing.
This low-pitched sound can be annoying when heard. Coming through?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Makes me want to harmonize with it.
It feels a lot louder than that. Like it reverberates in your body and in the house. It's really interesting.
So if you if it's going really loud, could you actually put your hand on the wall and feel the sound vibrating the walls, or is it just more of an internal thing?
Yeah, it's more of an internal thing, and it's really interesting because, of course, people are going to say, I've never experienced, so it must not be, right? And I mean, I made a point. I wasn't even thinking about the dang thing last year. The first time I heard it about the same time last year, just heard it a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it about the same time last year, and it woke me up because it's so quiet where I am. There's no other background noise, and after living in North Austin and near all the tech areas forever, I just got used to all the noise, right? And then when it's not there, it's like so profoundly quiet. So it woke me up at about 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And I was like, what the hell is that? And it's like, it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. And my first thought was, oh, maybe somebody's warming their truck up, right? Because it's chilly in the morning still. I thought maybe, because we do have a neighbor who on the other side of the fence, and sometimes he does that, but it's very distinct, his truck, the sound of his truck. And when I went in the house, I walked all around the house and it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. There was no one point. So that was interesting. And then I walked outside and I was experiencing the same thing. There was no like, oh, it's coming from the east or the west. It was everywhere at the same time. And then our friend Jane Clark, when she and Jerry were here, she experienced it. It woke her up too. They were in their trailer, their little Airstream outside, and she came in and she said, I'm pretty sure I heard it because it woke me up early in the morning. And she said the same thing. It felt like it was coming from everywhere at the same time and all that. So we've had a few discussions of our theories of what we think it is. So,
well, it's not surprising that it sounds like it's coming from everywhere, because that's the nature of low frequency sound. Because
Right.
yeah, from my years doing sound reinforcement for concerts and stuff, you didn't really need to point the bass, the subwoofers, the bass bins in a particular way, because the bass sound goes everywhere. I mean, it
Right.
just it's other sounds, the mid range, the high frequencies are more directional, but bass is just omnipresent, really.
Right. 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 Yeah, and it has that quality. And yeah, did you ever well, one of the things I'm trying to track down, I'm trying to research. Somebody posted this on one of the groups I was on, that the Spanish, when they were first here, apparently experienced it, and it freaked them out. They didn't know, they had no idea what it was, right? So I'm like, can somebody give some links? Can we have some? I want to see the historical proof that somebody wrote about this, some friar or something like that. So I'm researching that, but that would be interesting if it's been here for some time. And it makes me think, you living in the Bay Area, Scoop, did you ever experience like a weird frequency before an earthquake hit at all?
Not really, but my wife, I believe, did. Yeah, she has exceptional hearing, and she hears really high frequencies. And I refer to her hearing as the Portuguese dog ears, because she and the dogs hear stuff way before I do. And
Mhm.
we've experienced that to where she go, I can hear that, and finally I'll listen, and I kind of hear it, but she hears it, and it just drives her nuts, because she's really, it tuned, I guess, to the high
Sensitive.
frequencies. And I've
Yeah.
known other people who are that way, who just have a different way of hearing things, to where they'll hear it and I won't hear a thing. Of course,
Right.
my
Right.
ears have been damaged so many
Right.
times by
Well,
rock and roll.
right. Well, Jane and I were talking about it, and she says, I think it's the mountains talking to one another, right? And I said, well, I think maybe there's something to that. One thing I think about is the fact that the Rio Grande Rift is that split in the tectonic plate. And we have all these hot springs around here. So there's been, movement of the plates over the hot spots, in Socorro to the south of us, which is in south of Albuquerque near the Trinity test site, as a matter of
Mhm.
fact. It's part of the Rio Grande Rift too, and they have constant earthquakes, small earthquakes all the time, because it's over a hot spot. So I was wondering, like, just the earth move, like rubbing around, moving around, just, and maybe because of the nature of that rift, that 1,000-foot rift, there's access, we're a little closer to it or something. I'm no freaking scientist, unlike so
Did,
many people that know everything about COVID, but still, I just wonder about stuff like that. We don't know that stuff yet.
did your animals respond to it? Because I remember before, even minor earthquakes in the Bay Area, my cats would just go nuts, and I'd figure
Right.
they were just losing their minds. But no, shortly afterward there would be a rumble. I mean,
Right. Well, it's not the dog. He kind of sleeps through everything, but the cats, you know how cats are.
oh yeah,
They'll just kind of like they're doing this, that weird,
Mm,
like
yeah,
like a prairie dog.
yeah. They're trying to find out where that thing is.
Totally.
Well, there
Yeah.
are other hums, there are hums in Auckland and in Windsor, Ontario,
Okay.
um, that are similar. The one in Taos, and I'm looking at my Junior Woodchuck's guidebook, also called Wikipedia. It says a study into the Taos hum in the early 1990s indicated that at least 2% could hear it. Each hearer at a different frequency between 32 hertz and 80 hertz, modulated from 0.5 to 2 hertz. Similar results have been found in an earlier British study. It seems possible for hearers to move away from it, with one hearer of the Taos hum reporting its range was 30 miles. There are approximately equal percentages of male and female hearers.
Mhm.
Age does not appear to be a factor, with middle-aged people more likely to hear it. Does appear to be a factor, I'm sorry, with middle-aged people more likely to hear it.
Interesting.
So being an elderly person, I probably wouldn't hear it if I was there. And kids probably don't hear it. But it's kind of a weird and interesting thing that these things exist in various places. And you can sort of like, you can sort through reports, and at some point it's clear that there are other explanations for some of the things that happen. This is kind of like all of these kind of weird phenomena that we talk, the anomalous phenomenon,
Right.
that you've got a lot of things that are open to mundane explanation, but then you have some that really seem mysterious. And this seems pretty mysterious to me.
Right.
I think it's probably something that has a natural origin.
It reminds me a bit of the uproar in the diplomatic community over the sounds that have been disabling a lot of diplomats. They had it happening
Right.
in Cuba and in other places where there were diplomatic communities, and people actually were physically disabled. I mean, it really affected them to the point they had to get out and leave, and had residual damage. And it was supposedly like a really ultra low frequency, which has been used by the U.S. Navy as a means of communication. They had these ultra low frequency transmitters of some sort. I remember reading about it. They were used by the submarine services. But,
right, and they think that those are responsible for a lot of the whales beaching themselves because it's
exactly.
Yeah. I could believe that. That would, if that what I experienced went on and on, I would probably start clawing at something. It would drive me insane. It just, yeah. I mean,
They call that the Havana syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
A set of symptoms with unknown causes experienced by government officials and military personnel. And let's see, what did the symptoms include? Pain, ringing in the ears, cognitive difficulties, other sorts of things. And I think that people have experienced these things in other places: China, New Delhi, India, Europe, Washington, D.C.
Well, yeah, that explains a lot of it.
But the cause has not been explained.
right.
And some people think it's some kind of like Russian operation
or U.S. I mean, I think about, like I think about, if nothing else, like Area 51. There's that jet that comes in every day to Las Vegas, goes in and out to fly people to the base, Groom Lake base, and all that. And like, you can't talk. I've always been fascinated about Area 51 because my uncle Bob, who he was with Air Force Intelligence, and he worked on Project Blue Book. He had this bunker basically that he built out in the desert in Nevada in his later years. He was really hyper paranoid. I never heard the whole story, right? But he would monitor broadcasts in the valley, but he was just north of Pahrump, where Alec, what was his name? Coast to Coast. What was his name?
Oh shoot! Art Bell.
Art Bell, yeah, where Art Bell used to broadcast from. So it is really
close. From Pahrump.
I love listening to that show.
Oh, I'm from the high desert.
He was really close to Area 51, and it was when we went to visit. I think I told you guys before, when after my brother died, me and my mom went out to visit him, and where he lived in Fish Lake Valley was 100 miles from anywhere, right? It was really in the middle of nowhere. And I remember getting out of the car, and my mom went in to talk to the adults. I was 14, and I'm walking around. It's like pitch black, star field, beautiful. And I looked up, and way up there was this flanks of these little lights, like this triangle going across the sky, and it freaked me out so bad I went running inside. But he was really close to all that. And I just wonder, like the fact that in our house in Colorado, when we saw the stealth bomber fly over for the first time, we had no idea, we didn't know what it was yet.
Yeah.
And we freaked out. So God knows what our own government's working on. I do go a little conspiracy on that stuff.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of reports of triangular shaped objects, right?
Right.
Yeah, Clarissa and I saw the early stealth flights too. We were driving to California, and we were going through the desert around Edwards Air Force Base, and we saw this thing taking off. Well, not really taking off, but coming by at a low level.
Yeah.
Like, I thought for sure we were being invaded because it looked like no aircraft I'd ever seen. And, John and I grew up in a town where we had an Air Force base. So we saw all the planes, but it was like nothing. And it was disconcerting to see something shaped like that flying overhead.
Well, did you guys in Big Spring ever, during the whole kerfuffle with the Lubbock lights, do you guys ever see anything out there in Big Spring?
I saw something a little like that. It was off toward the air base, and there might have been jets involved. I don't know. We saw some lights that were behaving oddly, but because of the proximity of the air base, I always thought that it was probably likely that it wasn't anything otherworldly or strange, that it was some form of airplane. But the lights appeared to be kind of bouncing around in a strange way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw weird lights, but that could have been the mushrooms. I may be wrong.
Well, how about the Marfa lights? What are your thoughts on the Marfa lights?
I've seen the Marfa lights.
Yeah,
they're pretty interesting. The night that I saw the Marfa lights, we had an unusual situation that allowed me to see them a little differently than some people have. There was a thunderstorm, and lightning would flash, so I could see the lights. I could see that they were lights hovering above the ground. I mean, the lightning flash would illuminate the ground, and it was a little bit clearer to see that these really are lights that are just kind of floating out there.
Wow.
And it didn't really strike me as a reflection.
Wow.
Like they say, reflections of headlights or whatever. But I'm sure that's possible, but that's kind of not how it looked to me.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, so when you're looking off that direction, I'm trying to remember having ridden through there. I've never seen them, but seen the observation area and all that.
Yeah.
You're kind of looking toward the Rio Grande, aren't you? You're looking toward Big Bend, right? So think about it. I'm talking about the Rio Grande Rift. So it goes all the way to the Gulf. And we got weird movement up here, weird sounds. We got weird Marfa lights down there. Who knows? Maybe I keep going back to that tectonic thing again. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember hearing things about the seismic faults, like with the ones in California, that some people had claimed that they saw strange lighting effects around the time of an earthquake. And I could see how that might be possible because you have this incredible release of energy, and could very easily be generating some sort of a light effect.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, standing on the back of a dragon or something as it's moving around. I just wonder about those. I've just always been drawn to places with a lot of volcanism and tectonics and all that. I love Yellowstone, and it just seems like otherworldly or magical or something. But
it's kind of interesting. Oh, sorry. Well, I was just going to show you this Google map. So here's the Marfa Lights viewing area.
Okay.
Right?
Ah.
Directly out here, it says Marfa Army Airfield. I didn't really know that,
Well, if
but
it's
that is exactly where the lights appear.
well, if it's Army Airfield, that sounds like that dates to World War II because
Right.
the Army Air Force went away at the end of the war and became the Air Force.
Right.
I'm looking for, let's see, Marfa. Well, here's something about it. So it appears that it is abandoned. I mean, there's nobody there now.
It's the ghost of the missing airman.
There you go. There you go. That is kind of interesting.
It's probably Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen.
Right.
I'm just guessing.
Well, I just think, I think a lot about, again, the Earth and volcanism and all that. There was an amazing series I remember watching. I think it was in the 80s. It was called something about, Our Amazing Earth or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. But they did a whole thing on the Great Basin. And they talked about how I'm sorry. I sometimes I feel like I don't know who I've told these stories to. They told a story about how there's some pool in a cave in Death Valley that, they'd started studying a while back because it has some rare fish that only exists in this cave. And they said that, just like any cave with a pool in it, it was, placid and all that quiet. And they said after they started doing the underground nuclear tests, this pool constantly undulates now. Like these reverberations. I'm like, okay, that's not creepy, Yeah. So who knows what's going on down there? And it's kind of.
Well, the desert has its mysteries, right?
Yeah. Well, in the Great Basin, the Earth's crust is really, really thin, apparently. So.
Well, my favorite mystery is the mystery of the Hook Man.
Oh, what?
You haven't heard of the Hook Man? It's an urban legend about a pirate-like man with a killer with a pirate-like hook for a hand, attacking a couple in a parked car on Lover's Lane. Every Lover's Lane in this country has that story attached to it. I heard it about our town, Big Spring, Texas. When I went off to college, I talked to people about that. And they said, "Oh yeah, we heard about that. That happened in our." So it just kind of, popped up in the late 50s and 60s. It even got a lot of publicity in the Dear Abby advice column in 1960.
It was true. It happened to somebody that I know.
And according to this, it became a morality archetype.
Right.
Popular culture, mainly let it be used as a lesson to evil-doing teenagers who go out and commit acts on the Lover's Lane, and they're made to pay for their sins.
Well, you remember what the story was? The story was that they were there making out, and they thought they heard a noise, so they rolled up their windows and drove away. And then when they got where they were going, they found a hook hanging on the window.
Yep.
So they got away with the guy's hook.
Yep. And you wonder how that happened so many times. Where is he getting these damn hooks from?
There you go.
The hundreds of people that have said, yeah, that happened in my town. It's like, that poor guy just keeps going from town to town and losing his damn hook every time. He's not a very talented hook man, I must say.
Right. Well, the thing that comes to mind immediately for me is the detachable hand from Invasion of the Saucermen.
Mm-hmm.
You remember it in the back being and it crawling over? I mean, being a kid and watching that and like having nightmares for months after.
What was great about that movie was that the aliens would inject alcohol into people through little needles in their fingers. So they got one guy just really drunk, and everybody thought he had just been tying one on, right? He said, "No, I saw aliens."
Well,
that's really a pretty great movie.
Play going on there.
Oh, Johnny, don't hit the little boy that part cracked me up. It's like, it's not a little boy. It has a gigantic head. Like, that's not a little boy unless it has encephalitis or something. I don't know. But yeah, like, well, it makes me think too of the Legend of Boggy Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So you guys are you were in the South. I was in the Northern South. So that's more of a swampy thing. So I remember seeing the movie and being scared shitless. And so was that like something that like y'all knew about, or other than the movie, was that something in your consciousness?
I think I'd heard of that before the movie came around, but didn't really know very much about it. There's all kinds of weird myths and legends that
the Mothman.
Well, now the
Mothman, great.
Mothman's real.
Yeah.
I guess. It's kind of funny. We talked to a guy at South by Southwest who was like representing West Virginia there, and we talked a bit about the Mothman, and he actually knew people who had been involved and so forth.
Well, there was the Mothman prophecies, the book,
right? Well,
which I read by John Keel, and that book was chilling. It was really a pretty scary book if you kind of bought into what he was saying. It wasn't just the Mothman, but it was also the men in black who showed up and who were like keeping an eye on him. And there was that bridge collapse that happened, after the Mothman started showing up.
Right.
And the people who saw the Mothman just swore. They swore they,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of making fun of people, but there's so many people like that. I've seen so many interviews with ranchers who have dealt with the cattle mutilations. These guys are salt of the earth. They're not, they don't suffer fools. And this is like, they're like, I'm telling you, I saw my cow up in the air, in this light, and then it dropped back down to the earth. Like, what the hell? It's like, it's not devil worshipers. Everything can't be devil worshipers, for God's sake.
Yeah, there were a lot of those. Back when I was with Zodiac News Service, that was our favorite stories, and we got a lot of them back in the 70s. All these reports of people, a lot of them supposedly happened up near the Dugway Proving Grounds, where they were testing things like nerve gas and various chemical agents, and that may or may not be part of the thing. But one of the theories was it was livestock that was killed by an errant nerve gas that had escaped from Dugway Proving Ground and killed a herd, and the black helicopters were coming in to get samples to, at least, find out how horribly the poor livestock died.
Right. Yeah.
Apparently that's happened with sheep, horses, goats, pigs, rabbits, cats, dogs, with a bunch of other kinds of animals too.
And of course, we have the chupacabra down here in Texas, and Mexico, the goat sucker.
Right.
There have been a lot of people who claim to have found a chupacabra carcass, and usually it was like a mangy dog who had a really, really bad life and a really even worse death. But they have some places here in Texas that you can go and see a chupacabra mummy.
So go ahead.
I just wonder, like, I like to ponder things like dimensional overlap and things like that, things popping in and popping out again, because it's like a whole other dimension. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. Some of these things, like.
Well, the government investigation into cattle mutilations talked about potential natural causes, and they came up with various explanations such as blowflies, that are natural explanations of what might have happened. And the thing is that you have the mutilation, and there's also an absence of blood,
Right.
And sometimes there seems to be surgical incisions. So they investigated some natural causes. They came up with various hypotheses. I don't know that they ever solved the problem. Another thing was just human activity, by deviants like being cruel to bovines.
Yeah.
And then the cult thing was a big deal. That maybe cults were harvesting organs from cattle for their rituals, which is something we could consider at the Plutopia News Network.
Right.
And then there's government or military experimentation that some people have proposed might be happening, which you mentioned a minute ago. And then, other explanations that were not like offered as serious hypotheses were things like aliens and UFOs. Oh, wait a minute. There we
Gluten
go.
free.
I am so relieved to see that there's no gluten in that thing.
Lower your cholesterol.
It's a little. That's right. Well, yeah, I just always think about, what I saw when I had no idea what a cattle mutilation was. I hadn't heard of them or anything, but just seeing that cow that me and my friend Wayne came across, and there was no footprints around it. There was no blood. It was just like, it's almost like it had been there and just fell over, or maybe it was dropped or something. But
you see any blowflies?
No flies at all. We saw it was really fresh because the cow wasn't bloated. Mm-hmm. And the eye was gone, and it was like a conical cut. Like it was like cauterized cut. Like if somebody had done it like cone shape, right? It's like the eye area, the eye was gone. It was all gone. It was just cone shape. It was like it had been cauterized cut. And then its back end was gone. Not its legs, but it's like anus, all that stuff. It was the same thing. There was no blood. It was like it had been laser cut out, like when you see a laser cut when you're a maker, but on the cow. And we were scared shitless. We went screaming all the way home. We didn't know what the hell it was. And
then Donald Trump.
Right. and then it was a few months later that there was that. I think we talked about it too before, the Linda Moulton Howe series on the local NBC station on the cattle mutilations. And it's like, holy shit, we're right in the middle of it. We were right by El Paso County, and I was like, oh my God. And we saw black helicopters a lot, and you wouldn't hear any noise. Right. But you could look out our kitchen window and there's NORAD. You'd see the lights on top of NORAD, and we were by Fort Carson, so God knows what the hell they were doing out there.
Well, that's an interesting other anomaly that you've mentioned, the black helicopters.
Right.
So you were actually seeing those out there?
Yeah. We saw all sorts of weird shit.
Yeah, that's appeared in a lot of different conspiracies. It always seems to be the black helicopters show up and the evidence is gone.
Right. Well, and there's this other story of, when we were in Connecticut, when I was in first grade, our neighbors, after we had our first experience where we saw the UFOs down the valley, and then our aunt took us up to see the burnt out ring and all this stuff, and she said the stuff goes on all the time, blah 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 blah. Her neighbors told us this story about a morning when they woke up and they went outside in their yard, and they found all over the yard this foily stuff. It was like greasy, plasticky foil that you couldn't pierce. And they were like, what the hell is this? And then and they called, at that time. So this was 1970. And at that time, because there were so many sightings up there and so much going on, you were asked to call the Project Blue Book hotline number to report something weird. And they would just say anything weird, UFOs or whatever. So they had called them, and a team came out with like hazmat suits and gathered the materials and they were just told, we have everything under control, don't worry about it, you don't need to, we don't need anything else from you. And they never heard anything else later, like what it was, no thank you cards. No,
Sounds like Officer Bar Brady from South Park. Move along now. Nothing to see here.
right. And I'm like, what? That's too weird. Yeah. Yeah. And then later on, it wasn't until later on that I, learned about Roswell and all that. And I think that some of the material that was found in the crash was kind of a foily kind of material that, so I've always been curious about. I remember when Art Bell started talking about that he'd been shared, information about this, and I was like, wait a minute, that stuff sounds familiar. That sounds like what the neighbors saw in Connecticut. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposedly very thin, but very tough.
Yeah.
You know. Then again, it blew up. I mean, it was definitely something that would come apart.
Right.
Under the pressure of the supposed crash. And of course, the actual explanation for that was that it was a weather balloon, and some people buy that and some people don't. There's all sorts of stories around that, and really it's evolved as a mythology, like so many other mythologies. You kind of don't know what's true anymore. Right, stories get passed down, and people say this or that about it. And
one thing I found is the craziness and the weather balloons and its hallucinations has always been used as a cover story by the CIA, because if you remember when they released the CIA UFO documents, a lot of this stuff, if you read through it and you see the CIA and the Air Force receiving all these reports of like UFOs, and they would always refer it to the Air Force because the CIA didn't want to be identified as being any part of that whole UFO conspiracy.
Right.
But reading through a lot of these things, you could tell that it was a great way to hide whatever it was that they were, up to, by just saying, well, it was, someone said it was a UFO, and they it's a classic misdirection. So,
right.
A lot of the early sightings of the stealth aircraft was people reporting it as UFOs, and a lot of the government people were going along with, yeah, maybe it was, we'll have to investigate that, but it's not anything we have.
Yeah, exactly.
So this gets to the, so there was this Mirage Men thing, and I was in touch. We almost had the author of this book, Mirage Men, as a guest. We weren't quite able to put that together, but Mark Pilkington had written this book, and he and another guy had made a movie called Mirage Men, and it was about how the U.S. government used this sort of like UFO story, this mythology around UFOs, as a cover for advanced technology. And there was pretty serious evidence that much of what people were being led to believe was like, it was like a psyops kind of thing,
Yeah, misdirection.
Exactly.
Hey, look over there. Don't look
and
here.
Some people believe that that's also true of this guy, Luis Elizondo, who has been appearing as a former military intelligence guy who talks about UFOs, especially those videos that have been shown around of the so-called tic-tac shaped UFOs that the Navy pilots were chasing and that they videoed as they chased them. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Luis Elizondo, though it is apparently common for him to invoke his security oath when when questioned about certain things. So it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to know exactly.
Yeah, the videos of the Tic Tac, craft that were filmed by, Air Force pilots and Navy pilots. That's been given a lot more credibility than a lot of the UFO reports because, these are folks who had, they really didn't have a dog in the hunt. I mean, they're just guys up there flying aircraft who saw something weird and they caught it on radar and on video. And I watched some of those, and it was different. I mean, it was not something that I can imagine. We have that technology.
Right.
Then again, maybe we do. Maybe Biden's got him a secret Air Force One that goes 10,000 miles an hour.
Well, I'm kind of haunted. I think a lot about the Phoenix lights. That was pretty incredible. Like so many people saw it, and so many people recorded it, and it was mind-boggling because it felt like for once it wasn't just the crazy guy in the shack in the woods saying yes.
Yeah, there was some credible video taken. Normally, the UFOs that supposedly you had pictures of, it was always way out of focus.
Right.
But this was clear video of stuff that I couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
But I know one possibility.
Were they kind of similar to the Lubbock lights?
Nope, it was
Remember the Lubbock lights
on the other side.
I mean, I think the Lubbock lights in the 50s were a similar thing.
Yeah.
But the Phoenix lights were never completely identified, were they?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a good image.
Yeah, there's so many good pictures. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, here's one, but this is a very kind of small image. And there's the lights over the city.
Incredible. Yeah.
There are probably some that are clearer than that.
Yeah, that was amazing. So, when I think of the UFO-y stuff too, I think of crop circles. What do you think of crop circles?
Well, I've seen some interesting explanations, and I've seen some film or video of people, particularly in the UK, who really that was their hobby. Is they had a way of making crop circles using logs that they rolled around, and they had supposedly done it that way. But some of the things I've seen, it's like if these were done by some drunk Brits, those people had way too much spare time on their hands because that stuff would probably take a long time to make.
Yeah,
some of those crop circles were intricate.
Yeah.
Well, this is another thing that Mark Pilkington was into, and he apparently actually went out and with some guys creating crop circles.
Mm-hmm.
But this appears to be a hoax. It appears to be that these are artists, and that they enjoy like baffling people. It's not completely clear that these things are ever produced by some unknown source, but I don't know. I do know there are people who go out and create crop circles who actually make those things.
See, this is another thing where I'd love to know if there's, I don't know, people could have already talked about this on many shows or whatever of, is there evidence in past of people running across these in like the 1840s or something, right? But, I think they started coming to our attention, I believe, in the early 90s. At least that's when I started hearing people in the Bay Area talk about it. I can't quite unhook that from the rise of the rave scene that happened a few years earlier in the UK, right? And that to me, like people beginning to take MDA and MDMA, it completely, in music and everything, it brought about, just like LSD did in the 60s, right? It brought a whole new kind of way of looking at the world and patterns and all that stuff. So like, I've always like, maybe it's like the UK rave scene. I don't know.
Well, there were some early examples of that sort of thing happening to people from well, it was moldy grain of some sort that had created a psychoactive, chemical,
Yeah.
and entire villages would be hallucinating because they were eating their flapjacks in the morning, and suddenly they're seeing.
Yeah, LSD is derived from, I guess, ergot is the
Ergot. Yeah.
what they
that's
call the
what it
mold.
is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've had some stuff at McDonald's that definitely
Did you on a trip?
hallucinogenic. Those damn McDLTs. I think they were an alien.
I've eaten things that sent me on a trip, but it was to the bathroom.
Well, that too. Well, personally, I think I may be wrong, but I think this is all being created by Elon.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, our buddy Elon. He wants to sell us something, probably a trip to Mars for 10 cents.
Yep, that's
I
good.
could be wrong.
I bet it's more than 10 cents.
Well, it's inflation.
I guess Elon Musk is kind of an anomaly.
Oh,
Right.
God, yes. So,
Should we have 10 minutes left. Should we take a little time to talk about the imminent sale of Twitter?
Sure.
that is an interesting subject, and the entire world wants to know what the hell is he up to. Of course, they ask that about just about everything he does.
Well, there's an interesting thing about this. People that I have read, the comments that I've read from various people suggest that he's some kind of like right-wing fascist guy who's going to take control of Twitter and turn it into something like Parler or Getter or whatever.
And allow
Truth
Trump
Social.
and all them to come back, right?
Yeah, but in fact, he is not a right-wing person or a particularly political person, and his views are kind of all over the map. He's definitely a climate change activist, among other things. That's one of the reasons Tesla exists. So I think that if you're coming from an assumption that he is a right-wing guy, that you're going to go down a path of erroneous assumptions from there. So the real question is, does he really know what he's doing? And I guess another question is sort of like, what are his motives? He says that his motive is to make Twitter less restrictive on speech, I guess. He says he's like advocating for free speech. But, he's sort of wading into a really messy swamp, because Twitter was founded by people who thought free speech was a big deal initially. And they found that it doesn't work to just, throw caution to the wind and let things go. The other thing is that he's buying a company that has an international presence that will be governed by laws of more than one country. And some countries just won't let you do certain shit. So you have to restrict things for those countries. So it seems like kind of a mess to me. And in a way, I kind of think I've seen at least one or two articles where people were suggesting that he would probably back out of this deal when he realizes what he's getting into. And I've thought that might actually be the result here. But I certainly don't think that it's like the heat death of the universe for Elon Musk to buy Twitter. And I think, people think that Twitter is influential in a big way, but it's only as influential as the people who use it, right?
Right.
So the influence comes from the users that are on Twitter. And if you create a toxic Twitter where people don't want to be there, they are liable to leave.
Yeah,
I don't know about all those journalists and government people. I tend to think, they would leave if it was really that bad.
Yeah, if he's pulling something like that, he runs the risk of, you know, totally destroying his credibility on the stock market, and that's where all of his money is. Because just when he made this announcement, Tesla stocks took a big dive. It recovered somewhat, but that's the sort of thing. A lot of his giant wealth is all tied up in Tesla. And if he crashes that, then he's back in the help wanted ads now. And, you want to hire me? I used to be a big guy.
Well, I'm wanting to. I mean, I was an early adopter, and it was fun for a while, and then I just, I just haven't been into it. And I'm like, but I'm somebody who spends more time reading books than, scan. I know a lot of other people scan social media more and read articles online. That's totally cool, right? But that's not where my brain is at. So I don't feel this reactive thing about it in the same way. What I don't like is I'm just exhausted, as a lot of us are, at people that could, if they even had like $100 extra a month, it's like such a little amount of money just to make it by, and then all this money is going for stuff like this. That's what chaps my hide. And you hear people, it's like just all this money about shareholders, it's all for the shareholders and it's all for the speculation. So I'm tired of that. I'm tired of the whole, he seems to me like this precocious little boy that everybody keeps coddling because he's so brilliant, and I'm like, it just, that's the kind of stuff that gets to me. And so with the sale itself, say he does buy it, I'm willing to like take the time and see what he does. And then, I might leave, but why do I'm not using it anyway right now. So
yeah. I mean, that's the smart thing, is to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the other thing about all social media is that nobody's seeing all of everything on there. Right.
Right.
So, there are people who see things that are terrible. One of the worst things that happens on Twitter is that people start sending death threats if they get upset about something somebody has said, which is just ridiculous and crazy. And there's this concern that Twitter will no longer take action because those death threats will be seen as free speech. I don't know that that's the case, and that would be a terrible thing. But I do know that if I was in a place where I was getting death threats all the time, I would probably leave.
Right.
And that's why I keep saying that if it's a truly toxic environment, people will leave. And the people who stay, may not be the best people. So that makes it even more toxic.
Right. And I think at some point it's kind of like if only the toxic people are left, they'll devour one another. Because it's kind of like the idea of, I've said, of like, okay, say we end up with Gilead and it's a theocracy in this country and stuff, like say they win, right? Like just give it time. The denominations will start slaughtering one another because it's not the most righteous denomination. Like people that want to live that way with that toxic thinking and all that. I keep thinking about, kind of Aikido approach, let them take their energy over you, or like my mom always said, give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves.
Yeah. Maybe the internet was a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, it's like gun control. Internet control is also the thing that everybody wants to do in Washington. Oh, we've got to stop those interneters from spreading the truth.
Well, there's an interesting thing about this Section 230 thing where people say they want to abolish it. But what Section 230 does is it enables these platforms. And what would happen if you did away with Section 230 was it means that the platforms would be liable for anything anybody posts there, which means that they would either have to shut down or radically restrict content. So if you want freedom of speech and unrestricted content, Section 230 is the way to get it. It makes sense. And I don't really understand why the people who claim that they're advocating for free speech are also arguing that they want to get rid of Section 230. They don't really understand what the true effect of that will be.
Well, it's only free speech for me. That's what it's all about. Right?
That's true. That's true.
Well, our free speech is about to go away.
It is.
We're
it's
out
true.
of time. Only Gumby, Pokey, and Mickey are left.
All right. Well, thanks again. This was great.
This was fun. Let me get my cat out of the way. Here we go. All right. See you next week.
And I did get a note from Susie. She wasn't able to make it tonight, but she will be with us. She's going to take a couple of weeks off, and then she'll be back.
All right. Yay.
Hey, folks.
All
Come
right.
back and
See you
soon.
later, Gator.
Bye.
Bye.